You are listening to the manuscript of Soul, Part 1, Chapter 2. The Earth Before We Left. Jared sat in the train. The light of the evening sun was dancing through the broken windows, glided gently over the demolished seats and the graffiti-sprayed walls. He was sitting at the window in the almost empty wagon, scrolling bored through his phone, each slide a news article with another catastrophe. His finger stopped for a second while scrolling. The spaceship launch of the billionaire James Tusk was successful. At a press conference, he announced that for just $3 million, private individuals could leave Earth forever and be among the few to spend the rest of their lives on a spaceship that would transport humanity to another star system. Anyone can apply. He rolled his eyes, closed the app, and looked outside of the window. It was like driving through the sea. Everything was submerged in water, and the train disrupted the smooth surface, forming little waves. The evening sun glittered peacefully in the little disruptions of the surface and made it sparkle with golden lights. The only thing that protruded from this flat mass of water were the skyscrapers, the upper floors which were still usable for shelter. Everything was connected by bridges and platforms. The train glided through the rising water on rails that were hauled up on long stilts. Not many people were left, but some survived and lived a mostly peaceful life. The train came to a halt, and Jared rose from the torn seat to make his way home. He walked over the bridges and platforms surrounded by water and the tips of the skyscrapers when he heard a voice behind him. "Jared!" He turned around, and Boyle, a 71-year-old man and one of his best friends, was walking towards him with long, heavy steps, a big fish in a plastic bag at his side. "Look what I got!" As he reached Jared, he slammed his big hand against his shoulder. "Nice," he replied, a little bit unimpressed. His gaze wandered from Boyle's face to the mountains behind him, where he could see in the distance from their tiny-looking villas of Sector 1. The world was divided in two areas, Sector 1 and Sector 2. While Sector 1 was exclusively holding 1% of the remaining people that were mostly the prior politicians, people who were famous and their offsprings, or simply people who inherited a lot of money before the system collapsed. It has long been impossible for most of the population to become one of them. The people from Sector 1 lived in luxury, even now, while the rest was trying to get by. No one was really interested in helping them or changing anything. Sector 1 was just happy to live the way they did, and the suffering of the others was so far away. If you don't really see it, you don't really know about it, and if you don't know about it, why would you help? It seemed like there was also an unspoken fear of being dragged down by them into the darkness of poverty. They were just happy to live on the right side, in the right sector of society, and were not born into the slums of the normal people. No one wanted to suffer the way Sector 2 suffered, and deep down, without saying it out loud, the people of Sector 1 were even hoping that they will finally be gone, and with that their responsibility to help, and their guilt would vanish away, and they could just live happy and unbothered lives. Boyle and Jared walked side by side down the jetty until they arrived at a flat rooftop that reached about 2 meters above the water, with a rope ladder hanging down to the walk. Jared grabbed the rope ladder with strong hands and started climbing with an ease and skill that can only come from a lot of practice, his brown messy hair falling over his forehead into his eyes. Boyle followed him with his usual clumsiness and with panting and groaning. Laura was awaiting them on the roof, standing towards a big metal barrel, warming her hands on the fire. On the rooftop was also a provisionally hut. They all lived there. "Hey, Jared and Boyle," she greeted them when she saw them. "Something new?" Boyle held up his fish. "I'll prepare some dinner." He disappeared in the entrance. Jared stood at the fire, first silent, There was a tension in his face that Laura could not really assign. "Did you hear about Tusk press conference?" he asked. Laura shook her head. She picked out her phone and started researching. "No," she said slowly. "They will really leave. I can't believe it," she whispered. "It was so obvious that they will leave at some point," Jared stated. "They were talking about it for some time now. They have the money, they have the power to do everything they want. At first they destroy a whole fucking planet with their private jets, their capitalism, their growth, and when they have everything, they just leave. They don't care for all the people that lost their homes. They don't care for anyone at all except for themselves. They don't care what they destroy." Boyle came back from inside and put his fingers against the warmth of the fire. "It is easy to blame someone else for everything. We are in the comfortable position of having nothing." "Comfortable? What do you mean by that?" Jared asked, irritated. "We lost everything. Our families, our money had no worth anymore. Our homes, our belongings. So what the heck do you mean with comfortable?" Boyle did not look at him or Laura. He held his old hands against the cracking fire. "Yes, we have nothing. And it is easy to blame other people for our suffering. Most of the people of Sector 1 have nothing to do with the turns everything took. That happened long before. They are simply born in the world they live in. Who knows if you would behave differently if you were there? You, we, all of us, would probably just live our lives." "With wealth comes responsibility," Jared said, irritated. "Yes, it is true, and many just don't care. But many of them do, and with this comes guilt too. What shall they do? Give everything away? It is easy to say you would be different if you were never in their place. And you are lucky. You are lucky that you can just judge from down here. See yourself as greater and as better and as the bigger person, just because you are the victim that has nothing. Be happy with your life. You don't have to think." Jared got pale and his hands started to shake frantically. "So many people died. The system broke down. We have no functioning infrastructure, no stores, no schools, and the responsible just ran away." He shook his head. There was no president anymore. Many people protested against everything that happened, and more resistance groups formed. When life got harder and the catastrophe started happening, they were protesting against the lifestyle of the rich, which is destroying the living place of the rest, and they were protesting against the politicians that didn't give a damn anymore. But it was decades too late for that. Jared lived with his little daughter Elspeth, Boyle, and Laura. They were once resistance fighters too, but at some point there was nothing left to resist against. Laura placed one hand on Jared's shoulder, who was still trembling. Boyle sighed. "I'm sorry." For some time no one was saying a word. "Would you leave if you would have the chance?" Boyle asked. "I mean, sure, life's not perfect, but we have us, and we live. You know exactly that this will not stay like it is forever. I mean, look around. The water is rising constantly. We have less and less space to live in. A few years ago it was 10 floors to the roof. Now we can reach this roof with a fucking rope ladder. In 10 years our home will be gone. We will be gone. Elspeth." Jared's voice broke and a sob tore shakingly through his body. I can't live like this anymore. What's the point in all of this?" He almost screamed now. Elspeth, his little daughter, appeared at the entrance of the hut and looked around the corner of the door. Her soft brown hair fell into her little face, the brown big eyes looking at her father. "What's wrong?" She made little steps towards him, putting her little hand into his. "It will be all right," she said, as he broke down in tears, kneeling down to his daughter and hugging her, pressing her against his chest. Boyle was wiping away a tear in the corner of his eye. "I'm so sorry," Jared said. He wiped away the tears and picked Elspeth up. "There is an opportunity for us as well," Boyle said hesitantly. "How are you planning to get $3 million for each of us?" "The government is planning on gifting 2,000 tickets on the people still alive." "What? What are the regulations?" Jared asked. "Nothing. I guess It will be like a lottery. Some people will just win and survive, I guess. Jared's face darkened in anger. How can they decide about life and death like this? We are human beings, not just things one can play with for fuck's sake. And there is another opportunity, Boyle added. There will be a science program which will select a group of people. Boyle hesitated for a moment and continued. They believe this might be the only real chance to preserve humanity in the long run. So they're choosing people whose solely purpose will be to ensure that humanity doesn't disappear, to keep it going, to continue us. Are you kidding me? Boyle let out a short, almost awkward breath. I know how it sounds, believe me, but it's real. He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable now. It's not easy to get in, though. You have to apply, and then they test everything, your DNA, your medical history, your family. Boyle's voice grew more matter-of-fact, but there was something uneasy beneath it. No genetic diseases, no risks, the right age. They're looking for people who are as close to perfect as possible. What does perfect mean? Jared started, shaking again. Whatever they decide it means. This is so perverted, so wrong. We are all humans, all worthy of living, all worthy propagating. I can't tell you how much I hate this. Jared shook his head. I know. This is how it has always been. Boyle stared absent into the flames for a while. I can check for the food. Laura took Elspeth to her arms and carried her inside. The injustice and the inability of doing anything about it weighed heavily on Jared and made him incredibly angry. You know, I have not always lived in the sector, Boyle said hesitantly, staring into the flames. What? How? I never told you this. I think I never told anyone. Jared looked at him. He knew Boyle for almost 20 years, but suddenly felt as if he didn't know Boyle at all. He continued. I grew up in Sector 1. When I was a kid, I sneaked out of my parents' house and drove all the way down to Sector 2. I saw the revolution, the gang fights, and the resistance movements. I heard how the people were suffering and how they resented us. I was starting to be in the resistance forces as well, and I donated a lot of money. Almost everything I had to my name went to the resistance groups and to Sector 2. But it doesn't matter what I did, I always felt guilty. As if I don't deserve all this, just because there were others who do not have the same. And who was I to deserve all this? What made me different from them? It was not fair. The fire cracked and a big spark went up to the night sky. Why did you never tell me? I don't really know why. Maybe I was ashamed. How did you end up here? At some point I just left everything. I didn't want to have this advantage. I didn't want to have this responsibility that many didn't seem to see. I felt like I somehow don't belong there. Yes, I think I didn't want to feel responsible anymore. I ran away and left all my fortune behind. Jared had to think about the talk earlier. Boyle's words made more sense now. He didn't really know what to say or what to feel. He was in the same resistance group with him. Boyle burned for the resistance back in the days. He had always been one of the most important members. He enchanted his followers with his words of hope. Whenever they wanted to give up, Boyle would stand up and grab his comrades by the collar with his words, carrying them along with him. When Boyle raised his voice back then in the shabby hideouts, it became quiet. The hearts started to burn again. They were all one. And in these moments it felt like flying. Right now Jared felt nothing but numbness and emptiness. We could have done something out of it together. We could have had decided together what to do with the money. You could have helped us to come up to Sector 1. There would have been so many other opportunities. Jared shook his head in disbelief. Back then everyone hated Sector 1. You still do. You wouldn't have understood. You would have killed me or kicked me out of the resistance. You would have called me a pretender. Because you are, Jared screamed. Only now Boyle noticed his rage-distorted face, breathing heavily. Why are you telling me this now? In the conversation before, you were blaming everyone in Sector 1 for how the world turned out. What I want to say is, not everyone is like that. And by this, I don't mean only myself. I know the people there. I have had my family, and I know that not everyone is giving a flying shit about the world. I don't care, Jared interrupted him, angry. As you can see, all of your effort was for nothing. I hope you feel better now. Jared knew that this answer hurt Boyle. Jared wanted it to hurt. For some reason he couldn't bear standing there anymore. He turned away and walked towards the rope ladder. Jared? Laura walked out of the house and saw his head disappear as he climbed down. What happened? She asked Boyle, but he just shook his head and stared into the flames.